All right, hello, Gravel Throat Reviews here with a very special video to celebrate a special album from a special artist, specifically Xandra Metcalfe, aka Uboa. The product is based in Melbourne, Australia. The album Impossible Light was released June of 2024 on record label The Flenser, which is a really cool and unique record label that releases music from artists like Agriculture, Black Wing, Botanist, Chat Pile, Cremation Lily, Elizabeth Color Wheel, Have a Nice Life, Midwife, and more. But most importantly, Uboa's new album, Impossible Light, which really blew my mind. I took a chance and I reached out to Xandra, and she was kind enough to answer some of my questions about her project Uboa, which I will read for you in the second half of this video, so stick around for that. But hit the like button, it really helps out a lot. And now let's break down the album, The Impossible Light. All right, so starting off with the first song, which is Phthalates. This is nearly a 5-minute ambient piece that starts with some airborne synths and some heavenly vocals that drift through the foreground. This promptly gives way to a huge looming bass synth that feels primal and otherworldly. Uboa's signature sound dominates the midsection with little blips and frequencies that pan from ear to ear. The ending is a subtle rise of tension as all the previous sounds come back in, leaving the listener feeling anxious and anticipated. The second track is Endocrine Disruptor, and it is a continuation of the looming bass from the previous track. This is a perfect segue between songs. It makes the track feel seamless and smooth. There is some odd scraping noises that come in with breaking glass and some distant can drums. The haunting background vocals paint an image of like a nocturnal woodland filled with a multicolored fog. The vocals on the track are melodic spoken word delivery, but with some heavy reverb and distortion. The track progresses through a few more evolutions before this amazingly heavy pounding drum section comes in with this powerful refrain that makes you hang on every word. This energy gets cranked up even higher towards the end when these layers of synth and atmosphere compound like blankets of sediment. The track is amazing. I hang on to every section and every moment. It's very deeply gratifying. This is one of my favorite songs on the album. It's amazing. That is Endocrine Disruptor. Moving on to the third song, it's called A Puzzle. And it starts with an explosive impact kick that radiates out in the atmosphere and melts into some spacious synths that bloom as static fills the remaining space. Then suddenly everything drops out and is replaced with some dripping wet vocal blips that are highly processed and glitchy. Then these very intense flutters of distortion and feedback blast back and forth between your ears while these animalistic, panicked breathing sounds creep in. Then Uboa simply whispers, "Pull yourself open and undo the knots of your bowels." Then you're immediately hit with this boiling wall of sound that crashes repeatedly like glitching incendiary glass of metal. This track is glitch noise masterpiece. The mix is truly incredible as well. Moving on to the next track, that is Gordian Worm. And it is a collaborative piece between Uboa and A Blood of Pomegranate. Again, we have the sounds from the previous track carrying over and evolving into the next song. The massive impact kicks smash through the mix randomly and create a lot of tension. The bass synth in the background pulsates like a giant larvae. There is chanting vocals in the background that give a haunting and expressive feel. They're around the 3-minute mark, some of the effects fade away and we are hit with an explosive experimental industrial drum track that has incredible detail in the percussion. The vocals on this part are more melodic and catchy. They come and go so fast and they're so profound that it kind of leaves you aching for a replay to relive that emotion again. This track is amazing and the production is flawless. The sounds are huge and they're right in your face. Love that track. And moving on to number 5, which is entitled Pattern Screamers. This track feels like the beginning of a new phase of the album because none of the previous sounds carry over from the last song. This track starts with some light atmosphere and some reverb plucks from an ancient sounding instrument. They are absolutely beautiful. The plucks turn into descending arpeggios as a choral vocal melody swells and falls in the distance. A very heavenly high octave falsetto comes in and provides a balancing harmony. Just when we start to drift off into this fog, these massive walls of synth and bass and drums erupt and completely shatter the serenity with a sudden jerk. Uboa's tortured screams pierce through the mix like a molten scythe through a styrofoam castle. These moments in the album are simply amazing. The epic contrast between stillness and utter chaos gets repeated over and over to an unforgettable length. I love all the interesting layers and the attention to detail on this track. It's truly jarring. Super, super good cut. The next track is called Jawline, and it is a shorter ambient piece where Uboa's vocals have a repetitive and dramatic feel that is complemented by these planet-sized waves of dark distortion that wash in and out like an ocean tide. The production techniques that they use here are fucking next level. They're super good. Really good track. Number 7 is called Weaponized Dysphoria, and it comes directly in with some terrorizing glitched out feedback swells that slam back and forth as Uboa's vocals flare up with this tortured and mingled dissonance that leaves you levitating over your own bed. The progression in this, the song's progression is reversed in comparison to some of the previous tracks. This one starts out with a blistering intensity and then calms down towards the end, whereas a lot of the other tracks, start out with a calmness and then build up to a crescendo and then are intense at the end of the track. So this one kind of changes it up. This is a great dynamic in the album because it resets the mind before ushering you into the final 2 tracks of the album. Track number 8 is Sleep Hygiene, and it starts out with some lumbering synth bass, and Uboa sings about how they feel very confident to just rest safely in their bed and succumb to the action of being nobody. Then, once again, walls of crushing sound come in and obliterate the calmness. But this time it's with an uplifting and hopeful synth swells as opposed to dark and menacing ones. This signals a resolving feeling that provides relief from the terror and anxiousness of the previous tracks. The final leg of this song melts into an absolutely beautiful set of acoustic guitar chords that ring out and offer this peaceful ambience of a story coming to a close. This is really excellent. It's a great way to bring the closing tracks in the last moment. The 2 last tracks are Impossible Light and Golden Flower. Impossible Light / Golden Flower is nearly a 10-minute collaboration between Uboa and artist Ote Oni, and it starts with some beautiful xylophone hits that sound like they could exist in some distant memory of a childlike nostalgia. The sound of running water in the background completes the feeling of zen as some delicate spoken word vocals come in. The vocals sound like they are likely Cantonese or Mandarin, but I could be wrong about that. But the swelling and background vocals are heavenly and meditative. Some beautiful reverb chimes hang in the background like twinkled star clusters. The intensity continues to rise more and more, and the palpable tension lets you know that something big is right around the corner. This is the point in the track list where all of my dreams and ambitions for this closing track are met and surpassed. This soul-crushing, life-ending, yet somehow life-giving burst of beauty and energy explodes in a crescendo of pure cosmic bliss. In this moment, I just wanted to burst into tears. It was so epic, heavenly. This album is such an incredible journey. The drums are huge and explosive. The synths are dense and lush. The vocals are incredibly dynamic, and they range from being completely unhinged to tortured, calming, heavenly, and serene in between all these emotions. But the mix is incredibly modern and precise. Every song is polished and textured to the max. This is one of the best albums I've heard in a while, and I look forward to spending a lot more time with this record as the years go by. I would also like to mention that my listening experience was uplifted by using a really good set of headphones, like the Can headphone styles, and really good speakers. There is so much detail in the Impossible Light album, especially the low end, that you will miss it if you just listen on like a phone speaker or some cheap headphones. But this album is absolutely amazing. I'm super, super happy I came across this. I give it a 10 out of 10. All right, and that being said, let's move on to the second part of this video where we go over the interview with myself and Xandra Metcalfe of Uboa via the internet, of course. Xandra was kind enough to answer some of my questions. Super thankful for that. So let's get right into it, okay? So the first question I asked Xandra was, where and when was Uboa started, and when did you know you wanted to put more time and energy into the project? And she said, it started in my bedroom slash granny flat slash studio where I was living in 2010. I was unemployed for a long time, so I had nothing but time and nothing else to live for. I do it now because music is what I do with my life. It has been my interest all my life. I didn't really have anything else productive to use my energy on other than creative projects, so now that's my day job. I didn't plan anything. All right, and the second question I asked Xandra was, in terms of the sound selection and song progression, are they pre-planned or do you just build the track as you go and let it become whatever it becomes? And she said, I don't have one single method, and that's what keeps each song distinct. Some songs start with improv and then are whittled down into something more structural, like the song Faltes or Golden Flower. Some songs are done more normally by building things element by element, and generally these songs are more song-like the song Sleep Hygiene. Some songs are a combination of the above dynamics. Some songs are written in chronological order and they flow from track to track. Most of my previous album, The Origin of My Depression, was done this way, minus 2 tracks. Additionally, the songs Pattern, Screamer, and Jawline were produced as one song, then later split into 2. At the end of the production process, I connected all the songs together to enhance the flow of the album. Some songs are better at the start, while others obviously feel more conclusive, like the song Golden Flower. I often modify the beginnings and endings of the certain tracks after they're almost complete to tether them into one song, or tether them together. Impossible Light was intended to be listened to as a whole, but some songs can absolutely be consumed out of context in a modular fashion, like the songs Gordian Worm or Sleep Hygiene, while other songs need their other half, like Faltes and Endocrine. The song Impossible Light / Golden Flower needed to be last. It only really has impact after all that has gone before it. And she says, in terms of the sound design of the album, it was very much planned in advance. I wanted it to be futuristic, megastructural, transcendental, and biomechanical, sounds inspired by cyberpunk and also inspired by my own readings into transfeminism, xenofeminism, cyberfeminism, the political implications of gender cybernetics and biotechnology, and how it can be used to both liberate and oppress. And she says, with the Impossible Light, I wanted to reimagine 90s industrial, but without the outdated sound design. Nine Inch Nails' song The Downward Spiral, or album The Downward Spiral, was a massive influence, both in terms of being a cohesive conceptual whole, but also the fact that it doesn't really sound like 90s in terms of sound design, as it was far, far ahead of its time and still sounds fresh today. A lot of 90s industrial was limited by the production values at the time, especially with sampling. Trent's work on TDS was incredible because it was biomechanical. It blended digital, analog, and as well as field recordings and real instruments with synthesized ones, and yet manages to not sound cheesy. She also continues, I am careful to avoid cheesy and easily dated sound design choices by experimenting with what I think has not been done before. Cheese comes from using tropes. The song A Puzzle is an example. I was always disappointed that gore noise as a genre didn't literally sound like actual noisy gore. Additionally, most industrial music doesn't literally sound like a factory, minus the early Nubaten or Chu Ishikawa. She continues, so to answer, the sound selection and general sound design / vibe of the record is mostly decided in advance. Impossible Light being industrial / cyberpunk, while The Origin of My Depression album is more liminal and rusty, etc. And the songs are written either improvisationally and then structured later, or written more conventionally, or both. Sometimes I start off chronologically, but Impossible Light was a bunch of songs made separately, minus the 2 parts, then put in an order that I found rational, then carefully edited to seamlessly move from one to the other. And question 3 that I asked Xandra was, what bands or artists are you into lately within the realms of doom, ambient, and noise? She said, this is hard as I've not been listening to much music recently. I've been listening to some breakcore, but with recent chronic illness giving me lots of headaches and fatigue, I've not been diving much into music lately. She says, in terms of doom metal, I don't listen to most of it. I'm not a fan of the stoner kind, maybe with the sole exception of Boris. I'm not a big fan of blues riffs, and I don't smoke weed. The latest Cognate album is living up to my high standards of the band, so there's that. And she says, in terms of ambient music, I think Ethel Cain's Perverts was incredible. It was brilliant in every way, sound design, performances, atmosphere, etc. And I am very excited for her new direction. Also been listening to Leah Cole's work, which is also wonderful ear candy and inspired me to work with handheld radio more often. I am still listening to Tujuko Noriko's Creepsicle 1 and 2 on repeat. Not a recent record, but still a masterpiece of sound design and emotion. And she continues, in terms of noise music, I admittedly only listened to the new Tourette record, Mate Ere Arachi, which was a big eye-opener for me with its jittery textural sound design, combined with wonderful melodic synths. It will be influencing me for years to come. And as a follow-up question, I asked, what band do you love that no one would expect you to? And she says, I love Paramore, especially their second and fourth records. Hayley Williams is an incredible singer. I also do not renounce nu metal. Slipknot's Subliminal Verses is one of my favorite records, and every song on Linkin Park's Meteora fucks. I like the music I like. I don't really care if it's obscure or cool or not. All right, and the fourth question I asked is, have you had any experiences with poison spiders, snakes, or other creatures in Australia? And she says, I don't get why foreigners find them scary. Snakes are just long dudes minding their own business, and most of the time I really don't want to be bothered. I live in Melbourne, so the spiders are not really deadly, but can hurt and injure quite badly. But you won't be bitten unless you forget to shake out your shoes after leaving them outside. I also live in the city, so we have no snakes and not many spiders. Our wildlife is fairly tame and often very cute, especially possums, she says. And then she continues, besides, unlike US/Europe, we don't have rabies that is transmittable to humans. We don't have bears. Most Australians live in the desert. Excuse me. Most Australians don't live in the desert, but either in suburban sprawl or the city. Unless you go further north, most creatures are fine. It's the beaches that are much scarier. I really don't like the idea of being stung by a jellyfish. I am also pale and I don't tan, so the biggest danger is our sun. I wear sunscreen virtually every day now. All right, and so the fifth question I asked her was, if you could collaborate with any musician, alive or dead, who would it be? And she says, I am already planning collaborations with some of my favorite alive musicians, and it's still in the works and thus secret. If I were to be unrealistic, I would pick Trent Reznor, Diamond Gallas, or Elanis Xenakis, to pick somebody who is no longer with us, or for composing a video game or film, which on its own is a form of collaboration. And the sixth question I asked is, do you have any memorable experiences or hardships during the making of the album Impossible Light? And she says, the most memorable positives were the collaborations. I was so lucky that any of them said yes. When it comes to negative experiences, there were too many. It was stressful and difficult for everyone involved. I am never going to work that hard on a record again. I was burnt out and sick afterwards, hence the surprise release and no music video. I need to take a less exhaustive and more enjoyable approach to music in the future rather than force myself to make masterpieces, quote unquote, for the sake of people calling it a masterpiece or because of high expectations placed upon me by others. I don't feel like the need to I don't feel the need to prove anything anymore. Besides, a lot of music review organizations ignored it, yourself excluded, which I appreciate. I am very proud of Impossible Light, and it has turned out most exactly how I imagined it to be, perhaps better. But I don't feel like I need to do it again. Instead, I am rediscovering how enjoyable composing can be. Instead of being perfectionist and attempting to impress people, I am relearning how to make music for my own enjoyment as a hobby and as a special interest. I am finding I compose more songs now that I am less hard on myself. They are not as elaborate, but I'm happy with them. I also don't like to put out I would also like to put out less elaborate releases showcasing many different ideas rather than focus on one big thing. Cool. And the last question that I asked Xandra was, What advice would you give to your fans that may be struggling with life? And she says, fight. Most of our problems boil down to capitalism or some form of oppressive structure. Always be aware of the structural forces that are causing your life issues before blaming yourself. Find a way to fight them and what is within your power. If you cannot fight, it is okay to escape. In particular to trans folks and other minorities, women, immigrants, people of color in the US and other oppressive countries like Russia, this will pass. Fascism always loses and consumes itself. It's about minimalizing its damage before it destroys itself and surviving to see its collapse. Also, fascism does not respond to empathy or reason. It must be fought. My own paternal grandpa fought Nazis in WW2 and liberated a concentration camp. He was involved in D-Day. That's what it took to destroy fascism last time, and that this time will be no different. I wish there were other options, but fight the real causes of your struggles, not those around you, and certainly don't blame yourself. Even if you don't want to be alive while the world is awful and most of us are broke and don't have the ability to fight, survive out of spite. Good luck. Yeah. Pretty heavy words. Thank you so much for being here. Massive thank you to Xandra Metcalfe from Uboa for taking the time and energy to put this together for me. I really appreciate it. And yeah, that is the amazing album, Impossible Light by Uboa. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. I love this album very much. I'm listening to it all the time still. But yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. Go check out Xandra's project Uboa. Find her on Instagram. All the links. I really appreciate your time today. This is Ben from Gravel Throat Reviews. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.